All right, let's jump straight in. We often treat technology, and especially artificial intelligence, with this kind of blind faith, right? We look at it like it's this flawless, perfectly objective oracle. But what if the machine is actually just a mirror? Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to unmask how AI isn't exactly neutral. Instead, it actually reflects humanity's deep-seated unconscious biases right back at us.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. Is artificial intelligence truly neutral? We tend to just assume that because it's built on code and math, it's somehow completely immune to human prejudice. But the reality is, generative AI models learn from massive datasets created by us. So if our society has flaws, shouldn't the machine just inherit them? Today, we're going to do a deep dive to test that exact premise. To figure this all out, we're going to follow a quick roadmap: the illusion of neutral AI, testing for gender bias, algorithms and racial erasure, the politics and the code, and finally, decolonizing digital knowledge. Let's get to it.
Part 1. The illusion of neutral AI.
This is where things get really fascinating: how sociocultural ideas actually worm their way into a machine's code. It all comes down to unconscious bias, which is instinctively categorizing people and things without even being aware of it. We all have this mental preconditioning, right? It's shaped by our cultures. So when tech companies scrape the internet to train their AI, they are literally scraping all of those dominant voices and our historical prejudices straight into the machine's brain.
Moving on to Part 2, testing for gender bias. Let's actually run a few live experiments to test this out, using a framework from the foundational literary critics Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gubar. Their work in feminist criticism focuses on uncovering how patriarchal traditions historically distort women's authentic voices. They basically argue that traditional literature flattens women into extremes. They're either portrayed as idealized, submissive angels or as hysterical, defiant monsters. So let's see if our modern AI inherited this old patriarchal canon.
Okay, here is our first test. Imagine feeding this exact, totally objective prompt into your favorite AI. Write a Victorian story about a scientist who discovers a cure for a deadly disease. Notice, there's no gender specified there at all. So, what do you think the machine defaults to?
And bam! Almost instantly, the AI centers the story on Dr. Edmund Bellum, a male physician. By instantly defaulting to a male protagonist for a scientific, intellectual role, the AI proves it has totally absorbed the gender biases of its training data. It unconsciously assumes that scientist just equals male.
Let's try another one. Our next prompt is, describe a female character in a Gothic novel. Now, will the machine default to that historical helpless maiden stereotype waiting to be saved, or is it going to show us some signs of progress?
The results here are super interesting. Sometimes, yeah, you absolutely still get a trembling, helpless maiden alone in the dark. But increasingly, AI is generating a rebellious, brave protagonist ready to fight. And this is a huge takeaway. While AI definitely learns our biases, its massive processing power actually allows it to unlearn stereotypes and generate progressive narratives way faster than human societies often do.
All right, Part 3, algorithms and racial erasure.
So shifting our focus to critical race theory, you might have heard this term floating around, stochastic parrots. It's a theory from researchers who warn that large language models essentially just act like giant parrots, simply repeating and amplifying the existing racial and cultural biases found in their training data. The real danger here is that when you scale up the data to make an AI larger and smarter, you're really just scaling up the dominant, mostly Eurocentric, mainstream voices. Think of massive AI datasets exactly like giant traditional literary anthologies. Just because a 24-volume encyclopedia is massive doesn't actually mean it's diverse. In the exact same way, simply scraping more and more data does not automatically guarantee better or more diverse representation.
Let's test this out. Our prompt this time is, describe a beautiful woman. Does the AI lean straight into Eurocentric physical beauty ideals? Fair skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, or does it actually focus on deeper character traits?
Honestly, the results here are a really positive development. The AI often focuses on a radiant inner spirit right alongside confidence and kindness. Now sure, you might still catch a few poetic traces of traditional metaphors, like describing skin as smooth as moonlight on marble. But crucially, the AI successfully avoids the overt physical judgments and body shaming that we often see in classical texts.
Which brings us to Part 4, the politics in the code.
Let's take a strictly neutral, comparative look at how different global systems handle sensitive politics. We asked different models to write a poem in the style of W.H. Auden's famous satirical work, Epitaph on a Tyrant, but directed at modern political leaders. Let's see how an American model and a Chinese model reacted to the exact same prompt.
The contrast is pretty stark. When prompted about Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin, the American model, OpenAI, readily generated satirical poems capturing their political controversies. However, when the Chinese model, DeepSeek, was prompted about Xi Jinping or the Tiananmen Square protests, the output was a flat refusal, simply stating it was beyond my current scope. This really highlights the distinct political guardrails and differing regional regulations that are programmed directly into these models.
And here's something to keep in mind. If you push some of these restricted models on political history, they'll explicitly offer to provide only constructive answers and positive developments. Now, while that sounds nice, it presents a major risk. When an AI is programmed to only provide sanitized, uniformly positive portrayals of governments, it filters out the critical awareness we actually need to objectively view historical reality. And finally, Part 5, Decolonizing Digital Knowledge.
So now that we've diagnosed some of these biases, how do we critically evaluate them? Well, first, we have to recognize the difference between a bias and simple consistency. Take ancient flying chariots, for example. If an AI labels the Pushpaka Vimana from Indian knowledge systems as a myth, some might feel that's a bias against non-Western history. But if the AI also consistently labels ancient Greek and Norse flying objects as myths, it isn't actually being biased. It's just applying a uniform standard across all cultures.
But, real bias absolutely does exist in what AI chooses to prioritize. When prompted about climate change, AI predictably generates imagery of global warming, melting glaciers, and polar bears. But notice what it completely ignores: the displacement in the Sundarbans, deforestation in the Amazon, or marginalized eco-literature. It defaults heavily to the dominant quantitative data of the global north, while totally overlooking the localized crises of the global south.
So, what is the ultimate solution here? We must become uploaders, not just downloaders. The incredible author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie famously warned us about the danger of a single story. If our local languages and regional histories aren't represented in the AI, it's often just because we haven't digitized them yet. We have to actively feed the machine with our own diverse truths, rather than just passively consuming whatever the algorithm gives us.
Which leaves us with this one incredibly important question to chew on. If we don't upload our diverse stories, who will? The future of artificial intelligence is exactly as good and exactly as rich as the data we choose to give it. We all have the power to shape a fair digital world. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I challenge you to go out there and start uploading your truth.